Jackie and her husband were experiencing a rough patch in their relationship after she gave birth to her third child. They decided to go for dinner with the whole family when their night went completely different than expected after their waitress did this. Jackie left the table to go to the bathroom, and when she came back, she saw something that made her so angry. The waitress put something on their table that was unacceptable. She couldn't believe what she saw. She wasn't interested in creating a scene, but at the same time, she couldn't imagine just watching this without doing anything about it. Naturally, she insisted her husband let her see what their waitress gave him, and when he did, there was no stopping her tears. Being a mother is challenging, but nothing was nearly as difficult as what Jackie Johnson Smith experienced in the local pizza shop in Des Moines, Iowa that evening. She planned to have a relaxing evening with her family, but it was the opposite. Their waitress saw this family sitting together and was even serving them. When Jackie went to the bathroom, she took this as her chance to slip her husband a note. Jackie couldn't believe what she wrote and how brave she was to do this in front of his entire family. Jackie was a bold girl who even served in the US military. She wasn't the sensitive type, and you didn't want to get on her bad side. Besides spend in the army, her main purpose in life was being the best mother she could be. Jackie was one tough cookie. She rarely cried and she didn't let most things bother her. However, that evening something happened that made Jackie feel more vulnerable than ever. Even her husband was surprised by how she acted to this. Jackie always made sure she looked presentable, despite feeling exhausted and dirty from watching her children. Her husband was naturally good-looking, which would maybe cause problems down the line. Jackie was smitten with her husband and was aware that other women found him good-looking as well. She didn't want to let this irritate her, but after seeing how the waitress was acting, she couldn't help but be annoyed. It was clear that their relationship wasn't the same as it was in the beginning. After having 3 children, her physical and mental abilities were not in tip-top shape, and she was exhausted. She had moments of uncertainty in her relationship and hesitated before mentioning her insecurities. She typically would push these feelings away, but that night she couldn't help but burst after what happened. Jackie and her husband Tom used to have date nights often. Unfortunately, with a newborn, it was difficult to fit this in. Regardless, they wanted to spend time together, so they collected the whole family and went to their nearby pizza restaurant. Upon entering the restaurant, the new baby started a tantrum, so Jackie began breastfeeding. It was clear that the rest of the customers were watching her, but what she didn't see was the way her waitress was watching her husband. Your life completely changes when you become a mother. For starters, everyone has something to say about what you do. Naturally, when a woman starts to take her clothes off in public, people around her are going to react. Jackie was the mother of 3, meaning she breastfed 3 children and was used to this. She wasn't fazed by the looks she got for breastfeeding. However, the way her waitress was looking at her husband was something she couldn't ignore, and she wasn't going to sit back without saying something. After being stared at all the time, she wasn't going to let the staring at her and her baby bother her. Even though she heard people whispering about her, she still managed to ignore this and continued with her feeding. Jackie noticed their waitress watching her, and it made her a bit uncomfortable. She assumed that she had never seen someone breastfeed before, but didn't understand why she was so bothered by it. She could tell the waitress had something to say. When Jackie got up from the table, her husband requested the bill. As soon as she left the table, the waitress went right over to the table to give Tom a note. This sounds fishy, but could it have possibly said? He opened the note and the look on his face gave it all away. However, he was unaware that Jackie was watching this whole exchange, and at that point, she was sick to her stomach. However, this was just the beginning. Although she hadn't read the note yet, she knew that something was up. She was sure her husband would throw it away, but in reality, he took his phone from his pocket. Jackie was shocked and a million thoughts were going through her head. She was sick to her stomach and just kept thinking that her husband was no longer in love with her and was sick of his family. She couldn't believe what she was witnessing, and she wasn't quite sure what to do about it. Jackie was incredibly sad, but that was soon replaced with anger as she watched their waitress make a move on her husband in front of his family. She was thinking of the worst situation, and she was curious to see what the note said. The situation may have turned out differently if Tom threw the note right away. When he took out his phone, all she could think was that he was saving her phone number. Jackie returned to the table and requested that he show her the note immediately. Jackie read the note and saw that the waitress offered her husband a special discount on their meal. She was confused about what was going on and was extremely uncomfortable that she was flirting with her husband with his family sitting right there. The waitress also spoke about Jackie breastfeeding in the middle of the restaurant. While she had problems like this before, she was unprepared for the moment where someone would attack her. Jackie was completely overwhelmed, and suddenly the tough military soldier couldn't hold back her tears. Her mouth dropped when she read Waitress's note. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. All of a sudden, Jackie couldn't hold it back anymore, and she burst into tears. Jackie couldn't believe the note that she was reading. How could the waitress write something like this? By that point, Jackie was already crying and she sat back down at the table. She never saw this note coming, but surprisingly it motivated her to do something she wouldn't have normally done. Jackie was so enraged that she needed to voice her concerns on social media. While public breastfeeding is a controversial topic, she was surprised at how Facebook users reacted to what happened with her and the waitress that evening. She began the post describing her experiences with breastfeeding. She said that she has breastfed in all kinds of places and received many reactions in the process. But that night, everything changed for her. You're probably wondering who this waitress even is. Well, this drama starter is named Bodhi, and she has been a waitress for several years. She constantly sees women breastfeeding and noticed how people react. In her post, Jackie explained that it was her first time eating at this pizza restaurant. Her newborn was uncomfortable, so like any mother would, she began to breastfeed him. When she noticed the restaurant's negative reactions, she went to the bathroom. When she returned, she saw a note that left her speechless and distraught. Bodhi didn't have her own experiences with this, but she was always upset when she would see others judging mothers who needed to breastfeed in public. The note on the bill read, "I bought one of your pizzas. Please thank your wife for breastfeeding." Jackie watched this from the sidelines and her mind went to the worst place. She immediately assumed that her husband was taking their waitress's number. She had no reason to jump to conclusions, but she couldn't help it. On the contrary, Tom just wanted to take a picture of the note, and Jackie did as well. The responses she received were amazing, and Bodhi started something incredible when she wrote her a note that evening. After the chaos that started after posting this story, more people were speaking about the story. Mothers around the world related to Jackie and were also annoyed that they're constantly given negative look for simply feeding their children. Bod's bold action showed that there are so many people who are in similar situations to Jackie. Breastfeeding is rather controversial and uncomfortable, but Jackie is happy with the improvements being done. It is usually rare for a mother to get so much support and positive remarks when it comes to breastfeeding, specifically when it is in public. However, it is a natural process that shouldn't be frowned upon. Bodhi mentioned that she was happy to see Jackie breastfeeding. Bodhi did not want to stare because she was afraid to seem stalkerish, but she couldn't help it. She was ecstatic. Jackie noticed her staring, but she thought it was for a negative reason. She was so happy to learn the truth. Jackie had dealt with people's negative reactions so many times that she finally felt like something positive was happening for her. She wanted to show her appreciation for the waitress, but she was in shock. Jackie returned to the pizza shop and expressed her gratitude for Bodhi. She admitted that it is such an incredible feeling when fellow women can support each other through female empowerment. After their experience with Bodhi, Jackie and her husband have been better than ever, and Jackie has done great work with supporting moms who breastfeed in public. She uses social media as a platform to start some change. Bodhi probably didn't realize what she was doing when she showed a sliver of compassion that evening. Not only did it impact Jackie and her family, but also mothers across the world.